Pastor Roy Gearhart from Galloway United Methodist Church in Franklin, Pennsylvania, sharing a few words of encouragement to help us follow after Jesus. Well, I'm enjoying this beautiful weather today, and I'm standing out at our outdoor worship space here at Galloway. We have 3 crosses set up on the hill above the church. And I want to invite you, as I have before, that anytime you're in our area that you would like to stop by and just drive up into the parking lot, spend some time in prayer and worship, walk out there and sit in one of the benches in front of the crosses, please feel free to come and enjoy a moment with God. It reminds me of the way in which many people have throughout the ages, wandered through the wilderness of life and have had particular places where they've stopped, and it's become this special place, not necessarily a building. In the book of Genesis, where we're working our way through the story of God's grace, we see people who would have a moment with God in some place, and they would set up a memorial, and it may be nothing more than a pile of rocks, but that was the place that they could return to throughout the years and say, this is where God made that promise to me. This is where I accepted his promise and made a commitment to him. And there are places like that hold that kind of importance in our life, to remember what God is doing. And Abraham is a guy that we are following in his story this week, and it begins in Genesis 12. And the Lord called him and said, look, Abraham, I want you to go with me to a place. And this place, I'm going to give it to you as a home. I promise you this. Hence, it becomes the promised land. And interestingly, it becomes this promised land not only because God promised to get him there and give it to him, but to give it to his descendants as well. Now, when we look back on Abraham's life, and in the New Testament, the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, there is a look back upon many people who followed the Lord by faith in previous generations, including Abraham and Sarah. When it looks back at Abraham, it takes note of the fact that even though Abraham got to that place, he lived in it kind of nomadically. He didn't really get to settle in it. It wasn't like he was living there as an owner, but just like someone passing through. And so it was continuing to be a promise, not yet fully received, throughout his whole life. In fact, for generations to come, there is still going to be a great deal about this that is still a promise that is waiting to be fulfilled, that it's not completed until several generations beyond Abraham. And we see these things happen in our lives where there are times where we have to really wait on God. And some things, and Hebrews points this out as well, some things that we will end our life still not seeing the fulfillment of. It's along the way, though, that God fulfills promises in bits and pieces, and some of them with great deal of waiting and anticipation built into it. Just like God gave to Abraham and Sarah a son. You remember that when God started Abraham on this journey and promised him that he was going to make a nation of him, that he would have descendants that were more numerous than the stars in the heaven and more numerous than the sand in the ground, Abraham had no descendants. He had no children. And it was years that they had to wait for God to fulfill that promise, but he did. And God works in these ways in our own lives. We don't always know the full picture up front. We have to follow God in faith, trusting him to lead us to a place he promised, to change our lives in ways that he's promised. There are times that has to wait for its fulfillment. But along the way, there are these moments that we receive answers to prayer, his gifts of grace that come alive in us. And then there are those things that are too big for one lifetime to encompass. That God's plans and his purpose are so huge and so extensive, so far-reaching, that it can't be finished in your lifetime. And so you and I, like those in previous generations, may end our lives waiting still for God to fulfill many of his promises, and know that there is still so much yet to come. Really makes me wonder what God is working on right now in your life and in mine. That's not just for our own benefit. That's not just something that we're going to receive and enjoy for our lifetime, but something that we may live a whole lifetime anticipating and still look forward far past our own life with the wonder of knowing that God has still got many things in store and that we may have played a part in seeing that work through. What's God doing in you? Well, may God bless you today, and as you share this good news, may God make you a blessing wherever He takes you.